This was the segue into the Magic Internet Money panel with your host. You coming up, Jim? Yeah, you. Jim Duffy. Woo! Danny from Coin Corner, or Danny Scott. Coin Corner, Danny. On you go. Jose. Jose from Ibex. Mick Marucci from Geyser Fund itself.
Thank you. Yeah.
Take it away, guys.
Okay, can you hear me nice and clearly? Yes, you can. I have to say, considering it's a Saturday afternoon and day 2, you've all hung with it really well, so you need to give yourselves a big round of applause. You've hung with it well. So this subject that we're going to discuss today, I knew nothing about. So that's why I wanted to be on this panel, because I know nothing about this. I can't come up with any smart questions or any quibs or any retorts. So I'm going to rely on the panel, and I'm also going to rely on you, because I'm going to crowdsource some of the questions. So this is about magic internet money. Is that something to do with something called Lightning? Like the Lightning Network, the Lightning Network. Okay, so I know you know them. I know you've seen them before. Danny, give me 30 seconds on you and Lightning.
What Lightning is, or
just whatever.
Comes down from the sky. So yeah, Lightning is, I guess, seen as Bitcoin's payment protocol, payment layer, often referred to as layer 2. It enables sort of fast, instantaneous, very incredibly cheap transactions for Bitcoin payments.
That's really good.
In a nutshell.
That's helped me. Jose?
Okay. So not to repeat what he just said,
Yes.
I'll tell you what I tell my customers, which is think of Lightning as what the email was to the internet, Lightning is to Bitcoin. In multiple levels, but basically it's the killer app. It's what gets us to mass adoption because it brings that use case that anybody can leverage regardless if they're Bitcoin fans or not. Like even if you can just use it as a settlement layer, you can use it to send value across distance and time and do it for really, really cheap and really, really quick.
That was really helpful to me as well. Mick from Geyser.
Geyser, you're right. Yeah, so I think what they're saying is perfectly, really well said. I guess maybe I'll add a higher level way of responding to that question, which is Bitcoin is both this asset, like Bitcoin at the on-chain level is really much like an asset that you can hold, and in this conference we've talked plenty about this kind of financial asset, but very importantly is this network, and the Lightning Network is a sort of secondary layer on top of the asset where you kind of, you could say, lock up this asset and you create bridges that are called channels. And that really kind of helps to see Bitcoin as a sort of actually like borderless money. And that really has to do with like the primary properties of Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't know boundaries, it doesn't know nations, it doesn't know platforms, it's just entirely agnostic. And so the power of, I think the meme, magic internet money, has to do, I think, with the internet bit, like the internet money. The fact that it's this, just like the internet, it's a sort of agnostic protocol that exists across nations, across platforms, and therefore can be a superior form of money and eventually can create superior types of experiences for the internet economy.
That was really helpful as well. Okay, so that's kind of kicked off. It's raised some questions in my head. So, are you telling me the Bitcoin network, I'm just going to pretend I'm 6 years of age, the Bitcoin network sits there, tick, 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 another block and all that, and every 10 minutes a block's created in that blockchain, but it doesn't really do anything. So are you telling me that as money that doesn't really do anything, and therefore we've now created Lightning on top of that, or does it? So we always say we've created Lightning on top of it. What is it on top of it, or is it in between it? Is it like DNA? Like, how does it work?
Feel free. Can I take it?
Sure.
Okay. So I think what's going to be helpful here is to think of it like gold, right? So imagine the base layer of the Bitcoin, kind of like it's where gold gets produced, right? Digital gold in this case. And
Lawrence Lepard's going to love that.
yeah. Well, similar to gold, you know, Bitcoin, if you go to internet speeds, is slow, right? Same as moving gold in the real world is slow, because I don't know if anybody here has tried to carry gold anywhere. It's pretty heavy, it's pretty cumbersome, it's not easy to get from one place to another. And so what we did as humans is we basically first created paper gold, which were all the promissory notes, so we could actually send it very easily across time and space, right? So think of Lightning as that layer. It's the paper layer to the gold base layer. Now, what makes Lightning unique as opposed to the paper layer that we made as humans is that we don't need to have a trusted third party. So basically every transaction, like Mick said here, is prepaid for. That's how you guarantee transactions in Lightning. So there's no credit in Lightning.
So you've lost me. So do you remember I'm 6? So I'm 6. I want newbies in the audience here and my brother to be able to go, Jim, I'll tell you about Lightning later on because I now understand it.
Yeah.
So you kind of lost me there. Right, let me just go back. So you've got gold.
Mm-hmm.
So gold, the gold store of value is Bitcoin. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's the network.
Yeah.
And then you've got the piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
and the pieces of paper are the promissory notes. Is that all the sort of I'll buy that from you, I'll buy that from you, without the bank involved?
If I can jump in quickly, I think the gold analogy is really, really good. Actually, think about really the gold being Bitcoin, and you have these banks holding gold as their asset. But at the end of the day, they're all just holding gold. And then what happens with Lightning is that you have these different banks. So you have Bank A and Bank B creating the sort of channel with each other. And now you can essentially exchange, and they will both recognize they'll sort of be in this communication. But then you have Bank C that is connected with a channel to Bank B, right? And what Lightning makes possible, actually, is that even though Bank A is not connected to Bank B, they're all speaking the same language. And so they can communicate with each other using sort of gossip protocol. And I don't know if I'm losing you here, but
Yeah, I'm getting there. So, Bitcoin, was Bitcoin coded in C++?
At base level, but it's a variety.
You
Right,
can
okay.
code it in anything.
Yeah, so okay, right,
Yeah.
right, remember, 6 years of age, so I'm sitting there, I've got this sitting, but you're putting this, you're talking about this thing on top.
Yeah.
So is it a different piece of code, or is it coded into Bitcoin?
Should we take a step back a little bit and then say, okay, real world example, we're all on the Bitcoin network. Yourself, Jim, you want to come onto the Lightning Network, and what you do is create what, let's call it a smart contract between myself and yourself. So similar to what Mick was saying there with the Bank A, Bank B, Bank C. You create a smart contract with me that locks in 1 Bitcoin, let's say.
So hold on. I know that Lynn from Wormit is out there, and you've just said, create a smart contract.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's get back to...
Rewind.
So let's get this away from the language you know and make it 6-year-old language.
Okay. So,
You were getting there.
Do you want me to go?
I'll let you finish.
We'll go back to a dumb contract.
Yeah.
So it's just a agreement between yourself and myself that we have 1 Bitcoin in our channel, should we call it, so our communication layer. At that point, you can send 1 Bitcoin to me via the Lightning Network, which is instantaneous.
How do I send that to you? From
your wallet.
From my wallet. See, now it's opening up. So you didn't tell Lynn from Wormit about a wallet there. All of a sudden, so from my Bitcoin wallet, let's say it's from my Moon wallet, because that's one of the ones I'll use for my Moon wallet. I've got some Bitcoin on it, and from there, I'm sending that to you not over the Bitcoin network, but over the Lightning network.
Yeah. If we come back to, I guess, the example we was going through there of how it's connected, and you would be connected to me, and you're not connected to Jose here, but actually I might be, and have a connection to Jose, and Jose to Mick, and you actually want to send money to Mick. So at the point when you open up your Moon wallet and you send the transaction to Mick, actually that might not pass straight to directly to Mick. It passes to me, passes to Jose, passes to Mick.
And it's like these bridges that are built through Bitcoin the asset. It's Bitcoin the asset. It's like you're building a bridge made of, it's like you have, if gold is Bitcoin, you're building a bridge made with gold, if that makes sense.
So if that block of code is made, right, so 10 minutes, it goes, bang, 10 minutes the block of code is made. Is my transaction from Lightning in that block or somewhere around it?
It's not at all in that block whatsoever. It's not a blockchain. It doesn't use a blockchain. If you're using Lightning, it's not.
So can you see how I'm getting there?
Yeah.
And I'm going to come to you. So I still can't get my head around. Is it in the block or is it sitting above it?
So I think to get back to the gold analogy and the paper analogy, so what happened was the main problem with the paper and gold, right, was that I could just print as many pieces of paper as I wanted. Like, I have 10 tons of gold. You didn't know if I had it or not, right?
Yeah.
That was the main issue. What Lightning and the Bitcoin does, right, think of every transaction from Lightning kind of gets pointed to the Bitcoin layer. But the thing is, as we're transacting, right, let's say first Danny sends me $1,000. Then I send him back $500. So he owes me just $500. And then he sends me $2,000, and then I send him $2,500. And we go back and forth a bunch of times. And at the end, it ends up that I owe him $100 or 100 Satoshis. Doesn't matter. What we actually just publish to the Bitcoin network is that $100 transaction. And we consider it settled, right? But to do all of those transactions that I just talked about, we each had to commit the Bitcoin beforehand, and that keeps us from cheating and making more Bitcoin.
Got you. But so I want to come back to the question that it's not popped. They might be saying, for goodness sake, Jim. But so I get all that. I'm tuned in there. What I don't get is where it sits on the Bitcoin block. Where is Lightning sitting? Is it? I'm still not got. Is it threading through? That's the bit because then I want to come on to security.
So really basic level, Bitcoin is a piece of software running on a computer, and then Lightning is another piece of software running on the computer. And when I was saying before with the smart contracts, and you make a Bitcoin transaction, and then to that transaction between myself and yourself, that uses the Bitcoin software, transacts that, makes that transaction, and ties that onto the blockchain, at which point the Lightning software is effectively communicating with that to enable the channel.
Bingo. Got that. That's been good. That's been good, isn't it? That's been quite helpful. Right, so let's move on.
We got there, guys.
It took a while.
Yeah.
It's also really hard because software just doesn't work. Like, we as humans think in objects. Like, this is a glass, right? But just software doesn't work like that. And so it's a lot harder to find analogies that are accurate enough to describe how it actually works.
Yeah. So Lightning's a piece of code. It's software as well. How now we know that Bitcoin is really immutable and fantastic and secure. What is Lightning less secure because it's more pliable, or does it just feed off that? If I've got a Lightning address, I've got a Bitcoin address and a Lightning address because they're different on my Bottle Pay app.
I guess maybe it's probably worth just mentioning that. Yeah, I mean, there's the security of Bitcoin on chain is probably want to ensure that you put your Bitcoin, the sort of store of value element makes a lot more sense if it's on chain.
Yeah.
And then as they talked about, Bitcoin on chain is sort of the settlement layer, and then on top you have the transactional layer of Lightning. And so, Lightning can be this incredibly powerful tool where people, actually use Bitcoin to exchange it at super high fees, like really low fees and immediate payments. And also, the most important other element is scalability. The fact that it can scale to millions of transactions per second.
So I get that. So if I'm just using Bottle Pay, it's not an advert for them. But if I go into that and it says, "Do you want to send something via your Bitcoin address or your Lightning address?" So if I've sent from a Bitcoin address, I've got this feeling that I need 3 whatever confirmations. It's going to be really, it's going to get there. It's just never going to escape, right? But I always worry about, well, where's my lightning sats going? How does it all sort of, is it just as secure? Is it just as tight?
Yeah, if we come back to the security aspect of it, it's often, it inherits Bitcoin's base layer's security, let's call it. Lots of nuanced arguments there of different angles of security, I guess we're talking about there. But at a basic level, yes, it inherits Bitcoin's security layer.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, fire away.
As we're touching on there with the where it's going to and where you're sending it to, with the 3 confirmations and so on, that all relates then to a 51% attack, and we're going to start going down a bit more technical issues here.
Not with me.
So we'll keep it, if we keep that high level.
All right, and
sense.
where do the miners come in this? Where do the miners come in terms of Lightning? Is it different? I mean, I've seen Jack Mallers up there, talking about strike and all that, but it's like, I still don't understand that. So there's no, because the mining thing, is that not supposed to help the security of the network?
Well, mining is basically a misnomer because there's no mining going on.
On Bitcoin or on Lightning?
On Bitcoin, so here's the thing. What we have to understand is that what Bitcoin is, it's basically a database. Very simple. It keeps track of accounts and balances. And that's what it does all the time. Now, as opposed to the databases most people are familiar with, like banking databases, where it's kind of like an Excel sheet that you keep on your computer and you have the name, the account, the balance, the Bitcoin database is a shared database, meaning multiple actors keep the same copy of the same information.
Yeah.
Now, distributed databases have an issue, which is they still need security. So by security, we mean how do we guarantee the integrity of the data inside the database? And so what miners do is they guarantee the integrity of the database, of the Bitcoin database.
Yeah.
And for that, they get paid in Bitcoin. And that's all they do.
An analogy that Bitcoiners really, some Bitcoiners really don't like to make is an analogy between miners and sort of the army, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's an apt analogy because what secures fiat money at the end of the day is the fact that they are sovereign through military might and defense. And Bitcoin literally is like this army, this wall of encrypted energy, as Michael Saylor says, that secures the network and secures the Bitcoin blockchain. And Lightning inherits the security features of the Bitcoin blockchain.
Okay, right, I'm getting it. So the penny's dropping. So how does this scale? So right now, you're all doing things with Lightning. Are you coding something and you're coding and how does it all talk to each other and how does this scale? And then the next follow-up question that is then why does this scare the banks? So how does this scale?
Okay, so I guess touching on one thing you mentioned there of, I say we're coding our thing and IBEX doing one and Gazer doing another. It's how then, just because we're doing it separately doesn't mean we can't interact. So it's an open network, we can all interact with each other. We have interacted with each other in different ways. So as long as we're abiding by the rules of the network, it doesn't matter what we're building in and what the guys there are building in, we can communicate via that same network. As some good examples, IBEX have a point-of-sale device, and our Bolt card, you can go and tap and pay, and they work seamlessly together and interact together. We have no joint code base there in any respect. It's just abiding by the rules of Lightning. And similar with Geyser, we have the guys there have Lightning addresses, and we've set up recurring payments that can go to a Lightning address. Again, I don't think we'd ever had a conversation before that had happened. So you're able to interact in a global manner in a completely open network to anywhere in the world where that is where then that comes on to. I don't want to say banks are afraid. Banks are, I guess, uneducated at the minute, I think.
So hold on that. Okay, Jose.
And to add to this, just to clarify, when we talk about protocols, it's helpful to think of protocols as a language. So for example, in language, we have rules that, certain sounds in a certain way mean X. Like for example, I'm going to switch languages here. Mañana, in Spanish, it means tomorrow. So when I make that sound and you speak Spanish, you understand it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
In English, I make the sound for tomorrow, right? And that is the protocol for English and the protocol for Spanish. And much in the same way, there's a protocol for Lightning where you say, this transaction works this way. And if we communicate in that way, we all understand each other.
Okay.
If we don't follow the rules, it's kind of like in English I just started like mumbling, rah, 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 that's gibberish.
Okay.
Right?
So
that's actually a really good analogy, because you get incredible benefits from speaking the same language, right? Because then all of a sudden you can travel to Korea or anywhere else, because English is a sort of standard language, and therefore you reap the benefits of getting to know another culture, because you can actually converse with these other people that otherwise you wouldn't be able to talk to. It's incredible. And also, to add another powerful element of that is that it's permissionless, right? So, you can choose to speak that language. You don't have to ask permission, and you can all of a sudden, talk to all these people that you wouldn't otherwise be able to speak to. And that's incredibly powerful if you think about it in terms of the realm of finance. When it comes to Geyser, it took me 4 months to try to open a bank account for my company. Yeah. Like 4 months. I must have spoken to 12 different banks. And they said, cryptocurrencies, we don't want to be involved in that. And that's incredibly damaging to an economy, to entrepreneurship, even to accessibility to finance. And Bitcoin and Lightning, are being permissionless, being borderless, just completely change the rule of the game, change the rule of language. It's almost like, you have to have this. It's almost like, think about it as like academia, right? Oftentimes, to speak the medical language, or to speak a particular kind of academic language, you need permission. You need to pay a lot of money to get in. It's almost like a proof of stake kind of thing. Yeah. And with Bitcoin, it's a language that everyone speaks. Everyone can speak and can learn. You don't need to be certified. Like, you just speak it, and nobody can say otherwise. And yeah, it's incredibly powerful. It's just incredibly accessible to everyone. You could be 12-year-old and learn how to code it. You don't need to, again, ask for permission from academia or the state or institutions.
Great. I'm now smiling. I'm now getting it. So let me use a bad word. I'm going to use a bad word. It's not a Greg Foss word. It's called Cardano. And the Cardano network or ecosystem say we're going to do 1,000 transactions per second. We're going to we're faster than the Starship Enterprise. When I think about that and I go, okay, and I know Charles Hoskinson wants to create a global financial system on his platform, etc., etc. Is Lightning the Bitcoin Starship Enterprise for payments? That's the way I'm thinking about it. No?
I think it's more than that. Like it's a fleet of Starship Enterprises.
Yo.
Yeah. Because think of us, right? When we say, so here, we have to understand payments. So I'm going to go a little bit into payments so we can understand the example. So let's say we have, 3 main payments networks right now running the world, which is Visa, MasterCard, and American Express, right? Yeah. Now each of those has a cap of around 60,000 transactions per second because, these are transactions that you get written into a database all the time, right? So that gives us an upper limit of, let's say, 180,000 transactions per second right now in the world. But they're only servicing like 20% of the population. We want to service all of the population, meaning that number has to go way up. For them to scale is really difficult. Now, what makes Lightning unique, and when I say it's a fleet of Starship Enterprises, is that, Danny, I'm sure, is working all day to figure how he can bump the number of transactions per second he can perform. So he does this every day. Mick does that every day. I do that every day. And every other Lightning company is engaged in that same action every day. So there's a point in the very near future where you multiply the amount of transactions that each of us can do per second times the number of actors that are in the network. And as we grow, that limit grows. And then that's where we get to 1 million transactions per second, or 2 million, or we really don't have an upper bound to it.
Wow, that's really got me. Okay, so I now get it. So in terms of, tell me about my identity, because remember we talked earlier on, I heard Adam back saying, you know, guys, get yourself, you know, go to an ATM and do some peer-to-peer and get some off the system and all that. That's going to be, I think that's going to become even more difficult with the FCA regulation. You know, I talked about bottle pay, FCA registered in this country. Where do we go with Lightning and the future? Where do you see what is your individual visions of Lightning as a payment system? And can you benchmark that against Visa and MasterCard? Because they've got their crypto accelerators, haven't they, going on? Are they going to try and compete?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. Good question. I think Danny probably has a good idea of that as well, considering
Yeah, very, very quickly, I guess, on the Visa and the MasterCards. It's similar to what I said about the banks before. It's not necessarily that they're scared. I guess it's the education piece, and they are R&D, and they have been R&D for years now. It's not unheard of, and MasterCard, Visa card, the same. We've obviously released, which hopefully everybody here in the audience has received their bulk card in the pack. And the bulk card is equivalent, I guess, of what we're used to in the UK in particular, and Europe, with contactless card payments. You tap your card on the point-of-sale device, and it makes the payment over Visa. We've kind of replicated that in some respects on the Bitcoin Lightning Network, and you can tap and pay with your bulk card effectively. And that in itself should really start to scare Visa and MasterCard. I'm not saying, Coin Corner are going to take down Visa and MasterCard in that respect. What I'm saying is that technology is out there now, that works, and as Jose said there, it can scale infinitely. So it's about that, what was the terminology you just used? The fleet of people there, rather than an individual company doing it. There's a fleet of companies out there working on this to disrupt Visa, MasterCard, the banks, and the current financial system.
You going to pick up there, Mick?
Right. I think that's if you think about if you think about it, MasterCard and Visa do still have at the moment, pretty massive monopoly over payments, especially in the West, right? And I mean, the user experience is pretty good, right? You go there and you tap your card, and it's like fairly instant. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think what you guys are doing is so important. Just bringing Lightning to people's hands, and people can pay with it, and it's even faster and also cheaper to actually for the merchants, especially. And this is where I think it's incredible. Adoption will probably come from the merchant side, because it's like 3%, isn't it? Fees for every merchant they have to pay to MasterCard or Visa. So if we can reduce that to like 1.5%, holy crap! Like, yeah, they're gonna start accepting Bitcoin. They're gonna start accepting Lightning. But I think the big, like, massive leap forward in terms of the advantage that Lightning provides is just sort of as we mentioned, the global nature of it, the borderlessness nature of it. And that's just something that Visa and MasterCard just cannot compete in. Just like it's a lot more expensive. So we saw this with Strike rolling out, trying to take on the remittance industry that charges 10 to 50% per transaction, which is crazy. And guys, we want to provide a solution when it comes to just connecting the internet, going back to the magic internet money, connecting the internet economy and allowing, kind of growing this internet economy where we can all contribute to, we can all, kind of collaborate in, and all of a sudden we can pay someone in Nigeria to do a conference, or we can support Paco doing education in Africa, as you guys did. I think that's something that just, like a whole different league that Lightning provides for that use case. Yeah, I thought I had another point there that slipped my mind, but yeah.
So, okay, I get it now. I'm really getting close to understanding. I think Lynn from Wormit is as well in the audience. She's probably picking that up. Where do you see, based on what you've said, the adoption of Lightning and the scalability? Is it going to be, is it first world or third world?
I think it's going to happen kind of at the same time. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to be limited necessarily by geography. It's going to be more by use case, because there's use cases in the first world as there are use cases in the developing or emerging markets, you know. So I think it's finding those places where right now we either add value or we go where current payment systems cannot go. So, you know, the transaction that you just did with sending $5 to Africa, you wouldn't believe this, but that's a microtransaction.
Right.
So we have to adjust a little bit our concept of what microtransaction is. And what I mean by microtransaction is that it takes around $20 to get any amount of money to Africa. So if you wanted to send $5, you'd be down 15 or 25, right? So it's, but in Lightning, that's not the case. You know, so there's a very use case. So, you know, paying content creators, that's a use case, and they can be anywhere. You can do micro payments for, you know, content and streaming platforms. You can do nano payments for IoT devices and devices that speak only between each other. So, and then you can do more traditional things like remittances and stuff.
So just a final question to you. When people say Bitcoin is where the internet was 20 years ago in terms of adoption, where is Lightning in terms of magic internet money now? Where is Lightning in terms of that curve?
It's a good question.
I think we'll all agree that we're really early. Like we're really early.
Yeah.
I think there's only like 5,000 Bitcoin locked in the Lightning network, and that's really not much at all. I think there's more Bitcoin locked in Ethereum, in the wrapped Ethereum kind of Ponzi scheme. Okay, no, I'm just joking. Than there are on Lightning, and so yeah, there's a long way to go.
We are literally still early. You know, we're 4 or 5 years now into Lightning itself actually being on mainnet and working. So any new technology obviously takes many years to be embraced by people and to be developed in a way that can be commercially used. And what Joseph's touched on there with problems around the world, whether it's emerging markets or third world countries, there's different problems in different areas of the world with different use cases. So Bitcoin is about, and what us guys here are looking to do throughout the whole world, is finding them problems and fixing them with Bitcoin and Lightning.
Yeah, and we also have to bear in mind, Bitcoin moves at a different speed than the rest of the world. And with Bitcoin, Lightning moves even faster. So we gotta remember just how young Lightning is. So Lightning wasn't even possible before 2017. You know, there had to be like an improvement to Bitcoin so that it could enable Lightning. That was the first step. And then, and it was in the, basically, let's call it lab environment for a couple of years after. So pretty much around 2019 to 2020, we started to see the first Bitcoin projects going live, like in the wild, right? So that means we're only 2 years from when we first launched in the real world. And the amount of progress that has been done in those 2 years is remarkable. How long did it take, you know, credit card companies to do NFC?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great example, and to put that into a real world perspective, I think we at Coin Corner introduced Lightning coming up to maybe 2.5, 3 years ago now. And in the 2-year period there, we've also, probably about an 18-month period, we've come up with the NFC side of things to bring that into the real-world commercial environment. So the innovation on Lightning, because it's this open network, global network, so many people, so many companies working on it, the innovation will outpace anything we've seen in the financial world to date.
Yeah.
I think that was a masterclass. Did that help you? Did you find that helpful? Yeah. Absolute masterclass. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.